You know, a war can break out thousands of miles away, but the shockwaves, they can be felt right here at home in India. In this explainer, we're going to unpack exactly how a distant conflict can land a direct hit on our economy, our energy security, and even your own household budget. So let's get right into it. It's a really fair question, right? I mean, how can all this complicated geopolitics in West Asia actually affect the price of your daily commute or the cooking gas in your kitchen? Well, it all starts with one single, incredibly vital stretch of water. And this is it, the Strait of Hormuz. Think of it like a giant artery for global energy. Almost a fifth, 20% of all the oil traded in the entire world has to pass through this one narrow channel. So you can imagine, when this artery gets clogged up by conflict, the whole world feels the pressure. And for a country like India, that pressure is absolutely immense. Okay, so let's tackle the first and most immediate impact, energy. India's whole economy basically runs on imported fuel, and this crisis has shown just how fragile that lifeline really is. Just look at this number, over 85%. That's the share of crude oil that India has to import. And a massive chunk of that comes from the Gulf, passing right through the Strait of Hormuz. This incredible dependency is really the root of the problem. Now, this next number, well, it's pretty alarming. Less than 2 days. That's it. That's how long India's entire emergency reserve of household cooking gas, LPG, would last in a real crisis. It just goes to show you there's not a lot of buffer to absorb these kinds of sudden supply shocks, and that leaves millions of homes exposed. And it's a similar story when we look at the bigger picture with our strategic petroleum reserves. As you can see right here, India has about 74 days worth of crude oil imports stored away. The international benchmark, though, the recommended safety net, is 90 days. That gap you see, that's our direct exposure to a long-term crisis. But here's the thing, an energy crisis never just stops at the fuel pump. Oh no, it triggers these economic shockwaves that ripple through the entire economy, affecting everything, right down to the food on your table. Let's break down how. The impact is just so widespread, hitting sectors you might not even think about. We're talking about construction. It needs gypsum from the Gulf. Steel production, which runs on natural gas. Manufacturing needs imported copper wire. Even India's famous diamond industry, right? It relies on rough diamonds from the region. And crucially, it slams agriculture from both sides. Fertilizer imports get squeezed, and food exports get blocked. So, what does this actually mean for your wallet? This table shows it pretty clearly. There's a direct link. For every $10 increase in the price of a barrel of crude oil, the average price of everything we buy goes up by 0.5%. That's inflation you can really feel. And this isn't just some abstract economic theory. It's happening on the ground right now. We've got thousands of shipping containers packed with basmati rice just stuck at ports, which is a huge blow to farmers. At the same time, restaurants and hotels in our biggest cities are facing waits of almost a month for cooking gas. This is the real-world fallout from that distant war. This quote from analyst Nitin Darakar really nails it. He calls it a structural risk. What he means is this isn't just some temporary headache. It's a fundamental threat to India's trade routes, its infrastructure, and its strategic standing in the entire region. So the big question is, what is India doing about all this? Well, the strategy has two main parts. First, a rapid economic defense to handle the immediate crisis. And second, a much bigger long-term plan to build some lasting resilience. In the short term, the government had to move fast. First, it used emergency powers to make sure natural gas went to homes and critical fertilizer plants. Second, it used a temporary waiver from U.S. sanctions to quickly lock in new supplies of Russian oil. And third, the Reserve Bank of India has stepped in, using billions from its foreign currency reserves to keep the rupee from crashing. This whole crisis has really forced a major strategic rethink. The old way, being so heavily reliant on the Strait of Hormuz, is just too risky now. So the new strategy is all about diversification. That means finding new energy partners in places like Latin America and West Africa. And it also means building totally new trade routes, like the Eastern Maritime Corridor from Chennai all the way to Vladivostok, to bypass these old choke points. But look, just managing crises isn't really enough. The much bigger goal here is what they call strategic autonomy. It's this long-term mission to build resilience from the inside out, so that India is just less vulnerable to these kinds of foreign shocks in the first place. And you can see this happening now with some incredibly ambitious projects. A perfect example is Mission Aero Engine. This is a huge national push to develop and build advanced jet engines. We're talking about one of the most complex technologies in the world, controlled by just a handful of countries. And to do it right here in India. If we can master this, it would be a giant leap towards real self-reliance.
And another key area is high-tech electronics. There's been a recent breakthrough with homegrown gallium nitride, or GaN chips, and this is a total game changer. These powerful little chips are essential for next-generation radar, for missiles, for drones, and they're even going to be critical for future 6G technology. Making them here at home breaks a massive foreign dependency.
Like policy specialist Anna Ragowski says here, strategic autonomy can only be achieved by strategic breakthroughs. You can't just hope for independence, you actually have to invent it. And these kinds of technological leaps are the real building blocks of a more secure and resilient future for India. So what this crisis has done is lay bare all the risks of being so deeply connected to a very volatile world. The response, this national push for self-reliance, is going to take massive investment and decades of hard work. And that leaves us with one final fundamental question. In our modern interconnected world, what is the true price of self-reliance?